Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening to you, and welcome to our webinar on maximizing efficiency and overcoming labor shortages, the role of technology in manufacturing and distribution. My name is Jeffrey Backus. I'm the Director of Strategy and Business Transformation at Citron Cooperman, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. We have a fantastic lineup of industry leaders, including Mark Fagan, Katie Crane, and Shreya Shah, who will be sharing their insights on the M&D industry. Throughout the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Just drop them in the Q&A box, and our panelists will answer as many as they can in the last 15 minutes of the session. Before I pass it on to Dominic, let's begin by sharing on the chat where you're hearing us from today. I'm in Danville, California. It's a suburb about 25 miles east of San Francisco. It's sunny and warm today after 3 days of more unwanted rain, but please share where you're from right now in the chat. All right, I'm excited to hand things over to our host for today, Dominic DiBernardo. But before doing that, I want to thank you all for being here. Get ready for a great session. Dom, the comp is all yours. Time for you to introduce yourself and our wonderful panelists. Let's do this, Dom.
Thanks, Jeffrey, and thank you everyone for taking the time today to join the webinar. I'm going to play the moderator role here, and so I'll introduce myself and then go around the virtual table here with our panelists. I'm a partner here at Citron Cooperman. I run the CPM practice, corporate performance management. Excuse me. And I've been with the firm for about 18 months. So happy to be here to moderate this discussion. The next person I'd like to invite to introduce themselves, a little bit of background on the company they're from, is Shreya Shah.
Thanks, Dom. My name is Shreya Shah. I've been in the technology business and industry for the last 35 years, mostly playing roles in the CIO, CTO, executive leadership roles in various companies, large and small, Fortune 100 down to startups. A lot of my career has been spent actually in building out technology and systems and processes that support manufacturing companies, high-tech manufacturing. So a lot of my passion revolves around data, supply chain, manufacturing practices. I'm personally Apex and Kaizen certified. I don't know if people are familiar with Kaizen, the Japanese way. So I also try to bring in a lot of things that I've learned through the process of understanding manufacturing and supply chain into systems and technology. So most recently, I'm now basically an industry advisor, part of my own firm called Within Technologies. We are largely focused on high-end advising and building up startups. And I reside in the Silicon Valley area in Mountain View, California.
Awesome. Thank you, Shreyas. Katie Crane from Cascade.
Good morning, everyone. So as he said, I'm Katie Crane from Cascade Orthopedic Supply. I am our controller. So Cascade Orthopedic Supply is a distribution of prosthetics and some other medical devices. I've been in the industry, in the finance industry for, I guess it's been almost 10 years now. Kind of a wide variety. I worked for a law firm at one point, winery, and now distribution. And there's a quick little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. And last but not least, Mark Fagan, if you can go next.
Sure. Thanks, Dominic. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. Mark Fagan. I'm a partner at Citron Cooperman. I'm actually in White Plains, New York, which is a little bit chilly for May, early May. And I'm actually just got a new assignment to head up all industries at Citron Cooperman, but I've been working in the M&D industry sector, leading that with John Giordano and Mark Henry for the past several years. And I've been a practitioner for 35 years. The majority of it has been in manufacturing and distribution, which has a lot of complexities. I spend a lot of time consulting with clients regarding M&D and trying to have them work with technology, as I'm sure Shreyas is going to be a great resource for us during this webinar. But and it's mostly middle market companies, which they don't have, the struggle is they don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on technology. So they can't make these big mistakes that maybe a Pfizer could make. So spending a lot of time with them and as they struggle through this technology 4.0. Yeah, I'm really happy to share my experiences today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark, Shreyas, and Katie. I'm excited to jump into to the discussion here. So I think what we'll do is we'll launch right into our next question. But before I do, just to give the audience or the listeners here just a little bit of heads up, we'll have questions. We'll also sprinkle in a few polling questions that we would love your participation to answer those, and then we'll also go over the answers, and that might drive further conversation in the questions that we're discussing on today's panel. So first up, the question I want to pose to the panel here is, what your overall outlook is for the M&D industry, and some things to kind of get the wheels turning. Could be around the current economic conditions. We're living in an environment where interest rates are rising rapidly. We've had another 25 basis points increase from the Fed yesterday. We've got inflation that the Fed is fighting mightily to try to get under control. We've got supply chain disruptions. We've got labor shortages. The impact of automation. AI has just completely dominated, I think, our news feeds and our inboxes. The role of data analytics, and then even new technology. So again, those are just some ideas to get the wheels turning. But maybe what I'd like to do is go to Shreyas first to start with you to get your outlook, and then we can kind of go around the virtual table.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, as you alluded to, Dom, very interesting times right now. I mean, there's so many different dynamics at play. Whether it's the China challenges, the war, or on the Russia-Ukraine side, supply chain constraints. I mean, even things like, you guys still remember the container getting stuck in the Suez Canal that disrupted supply chain not too far back. Or you roll back 10 years plus back to 2011 when the massive flooding in Thailand impacted the disc industry specifically. With cascading impact. So there's a lot of different challenges, and if you look at some of the recent trends, there's a lot of nationalistic moves, right? There's a whole Make in America sentiment floating around. How do we improve and increase manufacturing back in the United States? India is coming up as a hub in manufacturing, as migration happens, from different geolocations. So really the question is to, how do we create a more resilient supply chain? What role can technology play in that? Clearly technology will play a role, and everything is really technology driven. You mentioned AI. AI is still very immature and nascent, but not at least putting it on the radar and thinking about it, how that will impact your organization would be a folly today, right? We realize it's not mature, organizations aren't ready, but you have to put on your radar and start thinking about it.
And Shreyas, from your perspective, you mentioned that you have Kaizen certification, which I take to interpret just in time, and with the supply chain disruptions, that's kind of bit everyone in the butt that's relied on that kind of model. What's changing from your perspective with the companies you're working with, in your company, in terms of on the advisory side? Like what are you guys doing to mitigate that?
Yeah, I think again, the biggest thing is to get out of any kind of single sourcing mode. You have to create multi-sourcing environments, whether it's different suppliers, or a combination of geolocations. There's any solution that companies are looking at come with different challenges. It's not easy to move supply chains. There are types of products that require qualified suppliers, right? So the qualification process could take 1, 2, 3 years, especially if you look at the chip industry. It's not just easy to move a fab or a chip manufacturing backend assembly plant also, but it takes time and cost and effort. So companies are starting to plan at least and execute in that direction, at least starting to create multi-source supply chains. I think that's fundamentally the big thing. No amount of technology is going to solve problems where there's massive flooding or geopolitical risk coming up. So you have to mitigate risks from other angles.
Yeah, thank you. And Katie, maybe we'll flip over to you. You wear more of the finance and accounting lenses. We've got a rising interest rate environment. Supply whether it's supply chain or even labor shortages. There's a huge impact or potential impact to the P&L with interest costs rising on any lending facility you have in place, and maybe even, having to pay up to get, what talent is available. Maybe you can speak from your perspective, what your outlook is for the rest of this year, and maybe, if you have any forward-looking, thoughts and, from your lens at Cascade.
Yeah, speaking with technology, it's actually kind of interesting. So we are distribution. We have 4 warehouses across the United States. And one thing that we've definitely found is, warehouse staffing has become a huge thing for us. As you mentioned, the labor shortages, trying to, bring people in. And we actually have started to implement having robots that can do certain tasks in our warehouses. So they can pick, receive, do certain stuff like that. So it's definitely something that we're continuing to invest in, so that we're not having to, really rely on labor and then deal with those shortages when that's not available. And on the finance side, it is definitely impacting a lot of our things. We are seeing obviously increased pricing, and trying to figure out how much of that we can absorb as a business, how much of that we're able to kind of try to shift. Also, definitely a lot of transportation cost changes happening right now. So trying to forecast this has definitely become an interesting challenge. And we're definitely having to rely on, doing a lot of different modeling and trying to then be able to predict a very unpredictable future at this point. And also really bringing in, we are really looking at a lot of AI options right now, especially when it comes to like accounts payable and accounts receivable. Again, staffing issues there, finding well-qualified employees. So we are going down the route of exploring options and what technology can really do for us in those areas as well.
It really sounds like you guys are using this as an opportunity to accelerate those investments to get yourself out of the between rocks and hard places when there are shortages or supply chain issues. So that's great. And maybe Mark, we'll wrap up this question with getting a perspective from you. Running the M&D practice and working with many different companies in the middle market. What would you add to the conversation in terms of the outlook for over the next year, and then beyond that, if you have any insight?
Sure. Yeah. And Dominic, besides those resources that you mentioned with our clients and just living the industry, we also, we're about to drop the Citrin Cooperman M&D survey, which goes out and polls 200 M&D leaders across the nation and most of them have international, I think over half have international presence as well. But the theme is that there's continued unrest and volatility, that the disruptors are more than they have been. You think that COVID was something tough. And in a lot of ways it was. M&D companies did well. And the ones that did well were the ones that really focused on being able to have transparency into their customers. And they did that through technology. But going forward in 2023, you named the top disruptors. The view is that this unrest is going to continue. That I think people will say, if we are in or enter into a shallow recession, that will be a win for us. I think that's really where the consensus is, that we're going to be in a tough bit of downtime. And the real estate, we're getting these real estate numbers that are highest amounts of capacity and empty real estate buildings in history, and that's going to continue, and that will affect the M&D industry. And so there's a lot of disruptors out there besides all the ones that Shreyas mentioned and Katie, with labor and geopolitical. CEOs have a lot on their plate. So getting important data is more important than ever. And again, that goes back to technology, this is what this is all about.
How do you find, in terms of like the conversation you're having with your clients when margins are getting squeezed, the cost to carry up maybe a heavier inventory because of the supply chain issues we've experienced, and interest, costs, rising on those holding costs and the working capital needs really increasing in the business. How are you guys navigating the conversation about you still got to, find ways to make the investments. Otherwise, things are only going to get worse. The longer you wait, you're not going to have, the luxury of time. Because it seems like, the only I guess, reality that we live on is that, chaos just continues to, kind of, I think, intrude in the business world, more frequently than in years past. I mean, it seems like there's some big disruption, every 12, 6 to 12 months these days. So how are you navigating those conversations with clients to, and how are they finding a path forward to make room for the investment they have to make to continue to evolve?
The ones that are doing best have the ones that have the best talent within the organization, and in the organizations that are able to identify the disruptor and make decisions quickly, including, I have clients that import, their sourcing partner is in China, and they had to deal with tariffs as well as inflation. Their container costs went from $2,500 per container to $18,000. It was almost as much as the product inside. They went back to their sourcing partner in China and went back to their partner in the retail and shared those costs between the two. So there was very aggressive moves by those that are in the situation, because at the end of the day, it is a long-term partnership with your sourcing partners and your distributors on the other side. And the cash cycle, the problem is the supply chain issues have lengthened the cash cycle. And now with interest rates going up, people were used to free money for 15 years. And they weren't as disciplined in their cash cycle, in the cost management, because they frankly didn't have to be. And now, when you've got higher interest rates, coupled with the tax legislation that only allows you to deduct interest expense when it's 30% of taxable income, that makes the cost of capital higher. You've got an increased cash cycle, and then you've got disruptors, geopolitical, weather, tariffs, and supply chain, where you have to be creative, and you need talent to do that, and you have to be able to move quickly. And those that can do that do best.
Okay. No, thanks, Mark. And it sounds like there needs to be a much bigger emphasis and focus on the cash conversion cycle. Extending those payment terms and being much more aggressive on collecting those receivables. So you.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
Great. So before we go to the next question, want to put the first polling question out there for the audience. And the question here is, what has been your biggest challenge when implementing new technology? So if you can go ahead, you should have seen the poll pop up on your screens and make your selection. We'll give you 30 to 60 seconds here just to make your selection. Then we'll review the results once we get to the next question. And I'll read off the options here as you're making your selection. So resistance to change, integration with legacy systems, the cost and ROI. And that could be, not knowing how to, wrap an ROI around a cost. Sometimes there might be some fuzzy things off the horizon. It might be the right thing to do, but you're not quite sure how to quantify it. Security and privacy concerns, and then technical challenges. Give you guys just a couple more seconds to answer that question. Okay, I think everyone should have had enough time to answer it by now. So the next question I'd like to jump into is, how can businesses ensure that their workforce is ready and able to embrace new technology? And what are some best practices for training and development? And so before we actually answer that, I think the question or the results are going to be shown for the poll here. So it looks like, the majority are saying resistance to change. So, you're stuck in the way of doing things you've always done it, which isn't that surprising. That's change management is always, kind of the number one thing that we're working with our clients when we're implementing new technology to bring these efficiencies. And it's really, you got to have a plan, you got to have buy-in from the top that's going to support that, that change management. Then it looks like the runner-up is really it's a tie for technical challenges and the cost and ROI. So that's interesting. So take note of that. I'm going to take a little screenshot in case we can weave that into our conversation here. Okay, so I'll repeat the question one more time, and then we can jump into the panel here. So the question was, how can businesses ensure that their workforce is ready and able to embrace new technology? And what are some of the best practices for training and development? and this might be, you might have, talent that's in place that doesn't have the right skill set as technology is adapting, right? So how do you invest in those, staff today to get them up to that skill set? And then if they're not, they don't have the aptitude, how are you going to go out in the marketplace to, start hiring the talent you need? So Shreyas, maybe we can start with you again, and I will pause and let you answer.
So, I mean, this is a big problem, guys. I mean, labor shortage is one thing, but having the right skill set makes it an even worse problem. And trying to hire and retain in this business is just a problem. But I think fundamentally, in my opinion, we got to go back. I mean, in terms of how we educate the next generation, right? I mean, we not need to make them more industry ready and more productive when they graduate out of schools and colleges. And I think that's a problem that not a lot of people are addressing today. Universities continue to, build course material the way they have been. They talk AI and all that stuff, but it's really applicability to real life problems and how they can apply that education and make them ready so that when they come into the workforce, they're actually productive a lot faster than what they are today. I think that's one way we want to try to address the labor problem, because I mean, it's expensive to train labor, right, and people, and getting that done early stage is just going to create a more robust workforce. Sorry, you were going to say something, Dom.
I was gonna ask you double click on your answer there and say, does that mean maybe companies partnering with with schools that are kind of on the leading edge, to kind of start to tap into the pipeline of the students that are getting kind of the latest and greatest. Now there might be also schools that are behind the times, and doesn't mean someone like yourself as an industry leader getting involved in academia to help set the new curriculum to make sure that we are arming the next generation with the right skills coming into the workforce.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a cutting edge sword in a way, right? I mean, what you don't want is everybody to become AI experts and nobody knows how to operate a lathe or a forklift, right? That's going to be detrimental also. So that balance has to be achieved. And for sure, industry partnerships with the educational institutes to really design courseware, to provide internships, to hands-on experience, learning opportunities as they go through the learning process. The whole co-op process, I think, is great. If we provide students the right learning environments. But so that's one aspect of it. That's the new workforce. I mean, then it's the existing workforce, right? You got to figure out. I think the biggest problem with the change management and resistance to change is the fear of change, right? Am I not going to have my job tomorrow because things are changing or new technology is coming in? I think there's got to be effort to really get people to understand. I mean, the reality is, yes, there will be some people who lose jobs because they're not the right fit, or there's efficiencies through automation, all that stuff, but it's inevitable. So it's for people to really learn and retool themselves, and for employers to create these, learning processes and training models that help the labor up their skills, so they are a better fit in the newer environments with the changing technology, right? It's not an easy problem for sure, but I'm sure there's enough, bright minds who can come up with the right structures and plans to, steer things in that direction.
Yeah, and it seems like with every wave of technology advancements, there's always that fear of jobs being lost, and the reality of jobs being lost as technology steps in. But there's also new job creation that happens as well in every one of those new technology waves.
So that's exactly the thing, is people need to be educated, right? Is okay, you don't do this anymore, but guess what? This is what's going to need to be done. So let's reskill or upskill you to do whatever the new way of life is.
Yeah.
I mean, change is inevitable. So if you're resistant to change, you're going to obsolete yourself pretty fast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shreyas. And so, Katie, I'd like to go back to what you mentioned a little earlier in the first question about leveraging robots in the warehouses, and you got to maintain those robots too if something breaks down. So, like, are you guys investing in new talent to make sure that those robots continue running And how are you guys going about doing that?
So kind of a couple pieces to that. The fun part is that we lease them. So they do get some maintenance from the company that we lease them from, but we definitely, it was a learning curve for some of our staff for sure, because we had to learn on hands how to reset them when something happens. Like if they go outside our WAP, then we have to go through this whole reset process. So we definitely have had to have the company come in and definitely train several of our employees. And since we do have them in, multiple warehouses, it took some time, and there was definitely a lot of training that had to occur so that we knew how to fix them on the spot, deal with the certain maintenance things that we need to at our level. So as we all say, like, you have to be able to adapt to change, but it definitely also comes to like having to retrain our employees to then be able to handle different situations. And luckily it wasn't so extensive that they were challenged by that, but their roles have definitely had to adapt a little bit for sure.
Okay. And I kind of want to put another little layer on this as we move to Mark to get your input. One of the things that has been blowing up, and I think has set a record for hitting 100 million users is Chat GPT, right? And leveraging Chat GPT and whatever the next evolution of AI is to not necessarily replace the workforce, but to augment the workforce. I know in my own practice, we're leveraging Chat GPT to solve problems. One of the tools that we implement for clients is Power BI. To create, to solve, DAX problems that might have taken 3 or 4 hours of trial and error, and writing the right prompts and getting AI to get us to an answer in, 10 minutes or less. So I'm curious in the conversations, Mark, that you're having, do you see any of your clients experimenting? We talk about like new skills or augmenting your existing workforce, actually encouraging their employees to experiment with AI?
Yeah, no, I am seeing that. I was just on a call and telling some of our own people that to utilize ChatGPT. And the thing is, it's always been there. These tools have always come up as technology over the generations. AI, you look at the heavy manufacturers, they're using AI because their machines have always had a lot of sensors on them. AI has now allowed those sensors to make very smart predictive maintenance and other type of operational decisions, because this machine learning now is able to handle variations and learn from variations, but it's still, there's still the talent and experience is still needed, because that AI bots and so forth and machine learning are doing things very quickly that may take a lot of repetitive process away from persons. So but then they can get to where all the analytics have been synthesized and you can make really good decisions. But I think that it's a tool like any other tool. The GPT tool, look, what it does is it just takes everything that's out there. It's a classic Internet of Things, and then gives you ideas to say, all right, it's in a format that I can communicate well, but I want to emphasize this idea and this idea. So I see it as another tool to help the workers, not replace the workers.
Yeah, and that's why the critical word that is augmentation, right? Not obsolescence and kind of replacement.
Right, because a lot of this is an art form and machines can't do that. The other thing I just want to mention when it comes to technology and ERP, whether it's an ERP system, a forecasting system, or a production system, the workforce talent is going to get better. One of the problems is, and I'm a baby boomer, there's a lot of baby boomers and older Gen X's that are in charge of these new implementations, and they don't have the same type of experience that the younger people do. And I think the baby boomers have to get out of the way when implementations happen and let the younger people more run it and make decisions. And then the last thing I want to say about that is, the processes that are in place in an organization need to be clean and understood before an ERP implementation takes place. You really need to understand a taxonomy of your business, which really is just the codification and collection of data that's absorbed inside of your business from your vendors and your partners and your customers and your employees, and make sure that's flowing well before you do any type of significant ERP implementation. Because if you don't have that in line, you're not gonna be able to really get the best bang for your buck for whatever systems you're putting in.
Yeah. Okay.
And if I can just chime in with a couple of things here, everybody keeps talking about AI as artificial intelligence. I like to think of it as augmenting intelligence, as you alluded to. And the other thing is, from a training or upskilling standpoint, in my opinion, people need to be trained to be some level of data engineers. I think there's so much data we're going to be working with, and machines will collect a lot of data. They'll generate some insights, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of human intelligence to derive insights and decision making from data. So at every level in the organization, we have to start training people to work better with data.
Do you see a wave of the new computer scientist or engineer is the better, I don't know, the prompt engineer, right? Asking the AI the right questions. AI might do the heavy lifting in terms of collecting the data and synthesizing it, but like it still needs to be asked good questions to actually unleash the insights that are actionable for the organization to take.
Yeah, no, I'm even talking about a very different level here, right? So for example, going back to my Kaizen training and all, fundamentally what Kaizen believes in is that if a problem and when a problem occurs, the best people to solve the problem are the people doing the job, not the management, not the shift manager or the executives. It's really the operators at the workstation and really solving the problem at the workstation, not sitting in a remote office and all that. I know it's a little old school and all that, but that's what I'm talking about is, enhance these people's problem solving abilities by helping them understand how better to deal with data. AI and all is great. At the end of the day, it's basically driven off of what data you provide and what biases are defined in the system, right? And I think that as yet, it's not smart enough to take over human intelligence completely and experience, right? That's what I was talking about. So.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good segue. We're talking about augmented intelligence, technology and human capital, right? And there's really we're not at a place where technology is ready to take over everything for us, and we go sit on the beach and sip Mai Tais.
Yeah.
We still need that human capital, and we still need the skills and expertise that only we as humans can kind of bring to the table. And so how do organizations balance the need for automation and new technologies while still maintaining the importance of the human skills and expertise that are built up in the organization?
Oh, is that for me?
We can start with you.
Okay, sure. So I'll be very brief on that. The Japanese actually have a term for that. It's called autonomation. Not automation, autonomation. And what that really is, very simplistically put, the right combination of humans and automation. So, everybody talks about automation as just, everything getting done by machines or computers and all that stuff. But what the Japanese do believe is not everything is automatable and not everything makes sense to automate. And this is where the right combination of, people as well as automation really creates the right efficiencies and optimization of processes.
To put it the other way, just because it can be automated doesn't mean it should be automated.
Yeah, there's exactly.
Yeah.
Either there's cost issues or other challenges. But so that's where the experience and prudency and rationalization comes into play in terms of what should get automated, driven by what objectives and goals you want to achieve from that automation.
And I bet you, Katie can really appreciate this because I see it in all my clients where so many resources in hours of teams, whether it be this example is a finance team, is taken by doing things that bots could do. And so if it takes a company 15 days to close every month, then that whole team is only 50% of their time is really there for advanced work and projects. And if you can take that 15 down to 5, what do you do with those extra hours? I'm not talking about getting rid of the people. I'm talking about now really important information that can affect the business.
Yep.
Yeah, Katie, you want to take that as a jumping off point?
Yes, happily. It's actually funny because I've had in my different positions in accounting, I've had a lot of different variants with this. You do have a lot of resistance from either current staff or managers, even of not wanting to look at different technology because they are afraid of losing their job. They think that by bringing in better technology, their position goes away. And I once had a manager explain it to me that growth is the best thing, because if some of our time can be automated, then you're able to shift your skills to help better the business in other ways. And I find, especially even in the finance role, as an accountant, my role has changed. I can run a financial statement in 15 seconds. I don't need to go and spend, hours of my time creating one manually. So then that allows me to work on different things that help better the business. So whether it's looking at better forecasting and being able to give better, advice to upper management, being able to provide more accurate information. And it is very funny to me. And I always laugh when this conversation of technology comes up, because it's so true that, let's not replace, but let's augment technology where it can be used, and then use our time to do better things for our business that technology can't do. And it's definitely, I think, changing a little bit of, the role of finance and accounting. So instead of being more just core accounting, you are becoming more of like a finance FP&A manager, and you're able to provide better and different information than just looking at historical.
I actually have a question. Sorry, I have a question for Katie. I haven't seen it much in my client experience yet, but as far as more and more companies investing heavier in personnel with either data analytics or forecasting and budgeting experience, versus what your typical finance department looks like with more accounting based. Do you see it starting to shift with technology advancements?
I see definitely an early shift. I won't say like it's a very quick cut and all of a sudden we're adding 10 head count to this, but I am starting to see even just in my business and like our parent company, I am seeing more of a shift of at least adding more FP&A roles where you're less likely to add a traditional staff accountant role, just because I feel like in where we are in a business environment, and we talk about a lot of these different things going on, inflation and this and that. So being able to kind of shift our focus instead of looking always at historical and having better information where we can at least try to help provide more accurate information to make more informed decisions is becoming a huge thing. I mean, and I know we definitely are adding a lot more tools to help with that. So whether it's Power BI, we have a lot of different technology. We use like Sisense for different dashboards, and but I do feel like that is becoming a little bit more of a trend. Even my role is starting to become a little bit more like finance and forecasting versus just core. Okay, we're going to close financials. We're going to do this. It's definitely becoming a lot more of like rolling forecasting, looking forward.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. If you allow me to step out of the moderator role for a second, my background's in finance. I ran FP&A teams for 13 plus years, and I've Mark, to your question, I mean, I've definitely seen over the last decade a major evolution in what a finance team looks like. It's different across industries. Some embrace it sooner than others, and also size of company as well. but finance has really become more of a strategic partner than what I would refer to as kind of an overhead function of what happened in the past, not very forward looking. What technology's enabled finance teams to do is become more nimble, to automate the things that technology is really good at, but then make the data curated, consumable, and actionable, and really partner with the business so they understand what levers they have to pull in order to optimize the bottom line results, to control costs, things like that. And so I just wanted to kind of add my 2 cents. I mean, that's definitely an evolution that I've seen, and I've started to see finance really evolve into the hub of business intelligence in many organizations.
Yeah, and just what as more and more of these disruptors exist, and CEOs and leadership teams need to understand their business better. I think, the old rule of thumb was probably 40% of a company's products actually are significantly profitable. They give like 90% of the profit. And so many of the companies don't have vision into it. And with whether it be the Amazon effect or the other disruptors out there, companies need to kind of pick and choose where they want to put their resources and time. Maybe they shouldn't be, maybe a third of their products or services shouldn't be being offered, but the data to understand the profitability of it is buried in their servers, and there's no light being shined on it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's all about data and processes, right? It's all about or lack thereof to analyze.
Yeah, I mean, and companies have to have a data strategy. A lot of times, you set up systems to get through the core processes, but they forget about how they can leverage the data if they have a strategy in place later to make sure that they're continuously refining and optimizing those processes. And like what I hear you saying is really what data allows you to do if set up properly is segmentation analysis, so you can truly understand where you're actually earning the money and strategically make shifts in terms of where you're investing in the business. And where you might need to fire some clients because it's just like, they're creating 80% of the headache and they're making, very little in terms of contribution to the bottom line.
And if your finance team is spending 15 days closing the books and then 5 days kind of dealing with the leadership team on what was going on, and then it's another cycle.
Right. So any other final thoughts on this question before we go to the next polling question? No? Okay. So the next polling question that's going to come on screen is, what's your biggest challenge within the Office of Finance? So, we've been talking a lot about, finance here for the last couple minutes. And so the answers here, we got streamlined financial processes, accurate reporting, having a single source of truth, where, you don't have one person in the organization pulling up something and someone else somewhere else getting a different answer. That just doesn't solve anything. That just creates more issues. You want to be able to trust your data. And then, clean data and forecasting. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to answer that polling question, then we'll go on to the next question. Okay. All right, so the next question is, how can businesses measure, we've been talking a lot about investment in the business, right? And whether it's, putting robots in place, leveraging artificial intelligence, or investing in new technologies, whether that's a new ERP system or, a CPM solution that can augment or connect, all of your source systems to give you kind of that single source of truth and holistic, view across the organization. How are businesses measuring the ROI of these technology investments, and what metrics should be tracked to make sure, there's always the thesis, right? And there's the analysis that's put together before you make the investment. But I feel like where a lot of companies end up falling short is they stop tracking the actual effectiveness of the investments they're making in the organization. Like, did they really live up to the assumptions that were made when those investments were made? And so maybe we'll start out of order here, and we'll start with Katie this time to see what you had to say from your perspective. Katie, are you there? Oh, we might have some audio issues there. Oh, there she is.
Oh. Sorry, computer fun today. yeah, what I was saying is anytime you make an investment in technology, it's so vital to track throughout the progress of a project and have measurable metrics. So, you know, when we've implemented all of our different strategies in the warehouse, that was something that we really talked about early on with the people that we were, you know, doing the investments with, is how are we going to be able to track not only what this is costing us, but then what is the productivity of this. So it's really cool because some of the different products that we have, they have reporting dashboards available to us where we can actually track productivity of this. So, you know, we actually also have a machine as distribution. Shipping is very important and cost of shipping. And so we invested in a pack size machine that actually has the dimensions of all of our products. And so when we go to ship something, it makes a custom size box. So for us, that was huge because we were able to then minimize some of our shipping expenses. But it was really cool because we worked with them to create a dashboard where we can actually measure the productivity of these pack size machines and know how much waste we're doing and how much we're actually saving on our shipping costs by having a custom made box versus a standard size box that we would have had to pay the shipping costs for. We've also seen this go the other way where we've made an investment in a technology and we're expecting a greater return. And, you know, after doing the investment and everything, we've done some of those calculations after the fact, and it hasn't been as productive as we had hoped. So it's definitely, it is really important though to work with both your managers and the different companies that you are doing those with and have a good way to measure that.
Okay. Shreyas, what about from your perspective? You seem
No,
like
so-
you get really involved in the, you know, implementing new technology, and, you know, there comes a heavy investment with that as well. So
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, right. Automation and technology investments are not cheap. So yeah, I agree with Katie. You know, we got to have measurable, I guess, ROI and ability to track it. You know, the challenge most organizations that I see have faced is they don't really necessarily know how to define these measurable ROIs, right, or the metrics. A lot of organizations end up with 500, 700 different metrics, and, you know, there's a lot of tactical stuff in there. So it's really got to focus on, you know, metrics that matter, things that are directly business impacting or measurable in terms of business outcomes and success. So, I mean, I like to use the word outcomes as opposed to, you know, output or, you know, whatever other terms people may use. But, you know, it's easy to come up with a large list of KPIs. I mean, whether it's MTTR, MTBF, DPPM in manufacturing, I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? At the end of the day, how is it impacting business? Is it improving our quality? Is it improving customer satisfaction, reducing return rates? I mean, all of these are going to add up into a benefit for the company in terms of, you know, eventual measurable dollarized outcomes. I think that's what people, you know, organizations will start focusing on. I mean, the thing that I have done in the past with organizations is really create a top-down view of measures, right? So you start at the highest level, which ties it back overall to the CEO's objectives. And then every layer down, as you explore through that process through the organization, these metrics, essentially the roll-up metrics that tie back up from these MBOs or the organizational level MBOs. So that way, everybody in the organization has a sense of how they're contributing to the overall benefit of the organization. It's just not me doing something and, okay, I improved my throughput on the product line or the production line, but did that even matter? I mean, as Mark was referring to, right, is only 40% of the products matter in the business most of the time, which are mostly the high profitable products. You know, putting in massive investments into a product line that's immaterial to the business is like stupid, I guess, right, of the business. So it's really figuring out what matters to the business and really measuring that and, you know, having a top-down approach from that point.
okay, Mark, final words on this question?
Yeah, I love the box example, Katie. I think Amazon should get that project, because some of the time the stuff I get from Amazon, it's a little thing in this huge box. Like, what are they thinking?
That is beyond true.
Yeah. And I'm just going to echo, you know, what both of you said is I see my clients the ones that do best with it is before they do an implementation, they really need to understand with all the stakeholders, what do all the stakeholders want to get out of it? Whether it be an increased visibility in supply chain, ability to forecast better, reduction of close time, real-time KPIs. And if they get all that upfront before, it's going to be easier for them to define success after that, long and expensive and painful process. So.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And excuse me. One of the things that I'd like to have just brought up before we move on to the kind of final kind of closing discussion and Q&A is really two things. One, if you have questions, do post them in the chat. And secondly, I'd like to bring up the polling results from question number 2 that we did. Which there you go. Thank you. So it looks like streamlined financial processes is the biggest challenge within the Office of Finance. Followed again. Now we got another tie here by single source of truth and clean data, which I think are kind of interconnected. When you think of single source of truth, you'd hope that you have clean data in that single source of truth as well. So, but with that into the last question, I haven't seen any questions show up in the chat box yet, but it's really about what technologies or software are you currently using. And since we have Katie on the call, one of the the practices that I lead here, so I guess it's a little bit of a shameless plug, but also an opportunity for Katie to brag a little bit about what she's doing at Cascade, in terms of leveraging Vena. Vena is one of our technology partners that we implement for our clients to bring a lot of these efficiencies, to augment the finance and accounting teams, to allow them to make that transition from history or backwards looking data to being forward looking, being proactive rather than reactive, allowing them to run sensitivity analysis, allowing them to have that single source of truth, and really bring condensed cycle times, whether that's the month-end close that Mark was referring to, from 15 days to 5 days, or even forecasting cycles. A lot of companies don't do periodic forecasts because it's a lot of effort, right? But if you can leverage technology to turn a cycle into a couple of weeks instead of several months of lots of people crunching numbers in a spreadsheet, it makes a big difference and can make a huge impact on the business. So that's enough for my preamble. Katie, maybe you can just share a little bit with us and the audience in terms of how your organization is leveraging Vena and other technology. I know you guys are investing in AI to automate the AP process and other things, but I'll give the floor to you.
Yeah, so obviously that's actually how I first started working with Dom, is that I joined the Cascade team, gosh, I guess it's been about 4 years now. And right when I was coming in, they were implementing, as he mentioned, Vena. And so prior to Vena, we were doing basically all of our financial reporting, including budgeting and forecasting, in Excel files, which again, we're accountants, we love Excel files, but it does become also very tedious if you're making a change in a budget file and then you want to compare it to actuals. Having to do that manually took a ton of time. Let's be honest. So I got the privilege of coming in, and right off the bat, my CFO at the time was like, okay, you're going to be our Vena expert. And so I got to take a very deep dive into the amazing Vena tool. And so throughout our progress of the last 4 years, our use of this tool has actually increased even more. But essentially, it's really cool because we're able to take very easily all of our GL data and upload that historically into Vena. So we do all of our actuals and financial reporting in there. But the amazing benefit that I've gotten is for our forecasting and budgeting. So one of the things that I really enjoy is that we have a bunch of templates built out in Vena. So I can go through, and we have a whole labor template where I can actually budget and forecast our entire labor plan down to the person, how much we're spending. We have all of our GL data saved there. But what makes this really cool is that I'm able to do comparisons between forecasts, between budget, between actuals at the drop of a hat. So I can be on a call with upper management. I've been on several recently because we are in the midst of doing our first forecast for 2023. And, they want to see, okay, well, we have this for the current forecast. If we, drop COGS by this or increase shipping rates by this, what's the effect on the P&L? And what's amazing to me is that I can instantly go into Vena, make that change in a template, refresh my P&L, and I can have that answer within a couple minutes. And being able to be that responsive and provide that kind of feedback that quickly has been, I mean, half of the board of directors are like, wait, how did you know that fast? And I'm like, oh yeah, I got tools. But it really does, it comes back to having, again, I feel like our roles are really changing, and being able to have tools that make that simpler versus having to go into an Excel file, make the changes here, save it, then try to pull up my actuals, pull this. I can do such easy comparisons and forecasting for the future, which again, really, really helpful in our line of business.
Yeah, and to punctuate what Katie's saying, what a CPM tool like Fagan, and there's others in the marketplace, really allow you to do is, again, you can free up the resources that are being spent on manual processes like putting together the financial statements, right, and sending out budget or forecast templates and manually aggregating those. That all happens automatically with technology. Your source systems, whether it's your ERP for your GL data, including your GL transactions, so now you can drill through to see the transactions all in one place when something looks out of place when you're looking at an actual versus budget or an actual versus forecast. It drives collaboration because now there's workflow that's involved. So again, technology is doing the heavy lifting to not only disseminate the information across the organization, but also to collect that information from the different stakeholders that have the best information because they're closest to the coal mine, so to speak. It also allows you to automate the account reconciliation process, digitize the month-end close process, which again brings that cycle time for month-end close down, that frees up those resources to spend on more higher and value add activities for the organization. The things that you run out of every month to get to that would be good for the organization, but you just don't have time before you start the next cycle. So anyways, that's enough of the commercial for Vena. It's a great tool, but I do want to give the last 2 minutes here for either Shreyas or Mark to add any other color in terms of other software or technology that you guys might be leveraging across your client base.
I mean, for most of my career has been around implementing ERPs and stuff, and we've used a lot of Hyperion, I guess, for FP&A and just core ERP systems from an accounting reporting standpoint. But we do see a trend, as Katie was referring to, in terms of application of robotic process automation into improving, some of the more repetitive, or taking over some of the more repetitive tasks of invoice entry or journaling or matching, etc. So there is a growing trend of RPA for sure in the organizations, or interest in that space.
Okay, that's great. And Mark, you got about a minute before we close.
Yeah, so a lot of my clients, they're either on NetSuite products, some on SAP for middle market. I think they really like the SAP. Same with NetSuite. But I got to tell you, I really like we're putting in at Citron Power BI, and as an industry leader, I'm really excited about the visibility Power BI is going to give me to be able to understand the different what's going on in each of the industries and each of the geographies, each of the practice areas. So it's a nice dashboard. It's clean. It seems pretty flexible as we're adding. All of us are kind of making our asks of the dashboards right now, and it seems to be working pretty well as far as implementing that. So yeah, really excited about Power BI.
Awesome. Well, we're just at time. I want to thank all the panelists for joining the conversation today. I'd also like to thank the guests for showing up, taking time out of your busy schedules. And we've also recorded this, so I believe it's going to be, a link will be sent out. So if you want to share it with your colleagues if they missed it. Again, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you guys all in the next webinar.